it's like beating my head against the wall. I've always found it very difficult to convince people who are managing other people's money to put money into gold or gold stocks. I have an easy time convincing people to put their own money into gold stocks. But when it comes to other people's money, they just don't want to do it. And I think the reason is that nobody wants to go out on a limb. I mean, because these guys who are managing other people's money, their main goal is not to look foolish and not to underperform the competition, right? So if you are a manager of a pension fund or an endowment and you're going to get reviewed, and the key is that you need to just not underperform, what is your incentive to go out on a limb and do something unorthodox like buy gold stocks? Because there's nothing really in it for you. Because even if you're right and you outperform, all right, I mean, it's not that big a deal. But if you're wrong and the gold stocks go down, and as a result of your bet on gold stocks, your unorthodox, outside the mainstream bet, you end up underperforming everybody else, I mean, you're going to get fired. I mean, why go out on a limb for no reason? In fact, the minute you start buying gold and no one else is doing it, your peers are going to start to make fun of you. So I think the incentives that these guys have, they don't want to go out on a limb. They don't want to risk getting fired by doing something unorthodox. But now when you have the Oracle of Omaha, Warren Buffett, right, buying gold in Berkshire Hathaway's portfolio or gold stocks, and believe me, Buffett wouldn't be buying a gold stock if he wasn't bullish on gold. In fact, gold stocks represent a leveraged bet on gold. So in order to buy gold stocks, you generally have to be super bullish on gold because you want to have an investment that is levered to the price of gold, meaning that it will go up more than the price of gold if gold goes up. So by buying Barrick gold, Buffett is showing that he's even more bullish on gold than he would be if he was just buying, for example, GLD, which he may have already bought too. We'll find out when they file the next 13F, right, for this quarter. But I think this now is going to put gold stocks back on everybody's radar. And not only, again, does this green light other institutional money managers to buy gold stocks, but now if they don't buy gold stocks and they underperform because they don't have gold stocks, now they may risk getting fired. Because if Buffett is doing it for Berkshire Hathaway, what's your excuse for not doing it for your money? So now instead of people worrying about looking foolish for buying gold stocks, they're worried about looking foolish for not buying them. And of course, the risk is now gone because if you go and buy gold stocks now and they go down, if it doesn't work out, you don't look that foolish because after all, Warren Buffett did the same thing. And so if you're simply doing what Warren Buffett does, right, the Oracle, right, he is the granddaddy. I mean, so if he has blessed this trade, well, then if somebody else makes the same trade, well, hey, I'm just doing the same thing as Warren Buffett, so don't get mad at me. So I think this really is the potential or has the potential to be a watershed moment for gold and mainstreaming gold and gold stocks. And, you know, not only is Buffett buying Barrick Gold, but if you look at what he's selling financials. He lightened up on all of his bank positions. He's basically doing what I already did, right? What have I been telling people on my podcast? Get out of banks and buy gold stocks. In fact, that is the one thing that really differentiated my value fund. And the reason that the value fund was performing so poorly over the past several years, and the reason that it's performing so well this year, and it went from last place to first place, right, during in 2020, is because one of the key differences between my fund and all my competitors was that I owned no financials in the fund. And the index has a heavy weighting to financials. I didn't like financials. But what did I buy instead of financials? I bought gold stocks. So kind of that was my main way of, being different. Now, nobody else would take a chance on doing that because nobody else was willing to underperform. I didn't care about short-term underperformance. I only care about long-term absolute performance. See, most mutual fund managers, they don't care if they lose money in the long run. As long as everybody else loses money, they're fine. They just don't want to lose money in the short run when other people aren't because they might get fired. Well, I'm not worried about getting fired. I got my own money in this strategy. I'm my own biggest client, and so I care about absolute long-term performance. I don't care if I have to lose in the short run to win in the long run, just like if I'm playing a game of poker. I don't mind losing a few hands if it means that I'm going to win at the end, or I don't mind sacrificing, a knight in chess if I know that I'm going to checkmate, right? Because I'm playing to win this game. I'm not just playing to be ahead, early on. I don't care about any of that. So I knew that in the long run, the financials were in trouble, and I would rather make a bet on gold than paper currency and the whole monetary bubble that I knew was going to pop. So I've already positioned, and now Warren Buffett is moving the Berkshire portfolio to look more like my portfolio, right? He's buying gold stocks and he is selling financials. Now, he's not completely out of the financials, but hey, the writing is on the wall. And again, we don't know how much more he's sold because I've been pointing out on this podcast how weak these financials have been. It's been among the weakest sectors. Maybe one of the weak reasons for that weakness is you got all this selling coming out of Berkshire Hathaway. So this, I think, is a big deal. And, after the market closed, you could see Barrick Gold in particular was up about 6% in the aftermarket. And a lot of these other gold stocks were up as well in sympathy because, look, a lot of people like to copycat Warren Buffett. But look, to me, this is better than any of these big Wall Street firms coming out with buy recommendations on gold stocks. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised now before the market opens on Monday morning if we get some of these investment banks, these big houses, putting buy recommendations on Barrick. Because if they do that or other gold stocks, and this is like one of the things that's really not fair. But when an analyst puts a buy on a stock or raises it to a strong buy or moves it up, they get credit for the price before they make the announcement. Even though the announcement itself may have an effect on the price, that doesn't count. And now, since everybody knows the price of these gold stocks are going to jump up on Monday morning, probably a lot of these guys, before the market opens on Monday, are going to want to put their buy recommendations in so it can count as if they had a buy on the stock before the big jump up on Monday. And in fact, I think not only is this bullish for gold stocks, but it's bullish for gold. Because again, Warren Buffett is making a bet on gold. He now likes gold. See, this really flies in the face of a lot of the criticism that Warren Buffett has had about gold. And of course, it never made sense to me that Warren Buffett was so negative on gold. After all, I remember an article that he wrote a long time ago about Squanderville and Squander Bucks. And Squanderville was America. And Squander Bucks was the US dollar. And that was a very good article that showed to me that Warren Buffett understood the problem. I just think that publicly, he's been trying to put a happy face on this situation. He's been trying to be bullish on everything, bullish on America, bullish on the economy, bullish on the dollar, right? Never bet against America. Well, he's betting against America now, right? He's always said, don't bet against the United States. That's exactly what he's doing by selling American banks and buying Barrick Gold. So the fact that he is buying the asset that he once criticized, right? He said gold is a non-productive asset, which is true. Right? Gold is not a stock. It doesn't pay a dividend. Gold is not a piece of real estate. You can't collect rent. Gold is not a bond that doesn't pay interest. Gold is money, right? Because money, if you take dollar bills and stick them under your mattress, well, that's a non-income producing asset also. Right? So in order to get income from your dollars, you need to invest those dollars. You need to loan it out. You need to buy a bond. You need to buy real estate. You need to buy stocks. But what if you think all of those markets are overpriced and you don't want to use your dollars to buy an income producing asset? What are you going to do with them? Well, Buffett's telling you, convert them into gold because he knows if he thinks stocks are expensive, right? And he just wants to hold cash. He knows cash is going to lose value. He understands that the Fed is printing all this money and he can't get any interest if he just puts his money in the bank. So what Warren Buffett is saying is that I believe assets are overpriced, but I don't want to be in dollars because I don't want to get wiped out by inflation. So while I am waiting for better opportunities, I want to buy gold. But he's doing one better. He's saying, you know what? I'm going to buy gold stocks instead because you know what? I can't get interest on a gold stock, but I can get dividends on Barrick Gold. Right? As Barrick is in the business of selling gold, I can own this company that is going to profit from the rise in the price of gold. So while gold itself is a non-productive asset, gold stocks are. Gold stocks are businesses. And Warren Buffett probably looked at Barrick Gold and said, my God, this is a fantastic business. Look at all the money they're going to make selling gold to all the people who need gold because they want to get out of dollars, they want to get out of euros, or they want to get out of yen. So this is a massive about face. Warren Buffett is saying, now is the time to buy gold. And that's why I'm buying gold stocks because this is where the money's going to be made. And, a lot of people are also saying, well, this is probably not Warren. He's not necessarily doing it. He's got a couple of portfolio managers. Maybe they made a decision. Look, I don't care if another portfolio manager made a decision. There's no way they didn't run it by Warren Buffett. Given Warren Buffett's public statements about gold and how he felt, I don't think somebody who works for Warren Buffett is going to decide, hey, I'm just going to buy a gold stock and I'm not even going to run it by the big guy before I did it. Absolutely not. There's no way Warren Buffett didn't approve of this trade before it took place. So he is completely on board with buying gold stocks. And who knows, again, how many more he has already purchased. And this is not only just a big vote of confidence in gold, but it is a vote of no confidence in the U.S. dollar. And by the way, the U.S. dollar index had another down week. In fact, it closed at its lowest closing price on a weekly basis since May of 2018. So that's more than 2 years since you had the dollar index at a lower weekly close than this week. And I'm going to thank my son Spencer for pointing that out to me on Twitter. I know a lot of you have been following him, and so you should follow him if you're not already doing that. But gold, of course, had a down week because we got obliterated on Tuesday, right? Gold, my last podcast was specifically on the shakeout in the price of gold. And believe me, a lot of people who got shaken out on Tuesday are going to be regretting that on Monday when we can see a big move up. And of course, we've already recovered quite a bit from that shellacking that we got on Tuesday. So gold did manage to finish the week only down about $50. Silver, which had that, $4 drop, was down about $1.50 or so. So gold closed the week at 1,945, not above 2,000, but still above the old record high that we set in 2011. So technically, the gold chart is looking beautiful. And of course, it's going to be looking even better when investors have a chance to react to Warren Buffett Sunday night on Monday. Silver ended up closing at $26.44. But, another very interesting development that took place during the week was the very, very weak 30-year bond auction, right? The government was selling 30-year bonds, and not as many people as expected showed up to bid. I mean, what's amazing is that anybody is dumb enough to show up to bid to a 30-year U.S. government bond auction. I mean, you've got to have rocks in your head to want to loan the U.S. government money for 30 years at such a low rate of interest when the dollar is going to collapse by far more than that rate. And one of these days, nobody will show up, right? One of these days, the only bidder is going to be the Federal Reserve. And of course, by then, it's too late, right? By then, the dollar is toast. So you don't want to wait until the Fed's the only bidder. But you can clearly see that other bidders are not showing up. And so that caused bond yields to rise. But what is significant about that rise in bond yields that we got is that we also got a rise in the price of gold. Right. And the conventional wisdom, and put wisdom in quotes, is that rising bond yields are bad for gold, right? Because it's competition. That's what everybody believes. But they're all wrong, because bond yields are rising because of inflation. Why is it that people don't want to buy 30-year bonds? Because there's a negative real yield there, because the yield doesn't keep you even with inflation. So bonds sold off because people are worried about inflation. Well, if you're worried about inflation, you buy gold. And we're having bond yields in gold rising at the same time. And despite the fact that these so-called experts are scratching their heads trying to figure out why this is happening, this is exactly what should be happening. And this is going to continue to happen, and it's going to confound